Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We hope that you enjoy today's sermon by our pastoral staff at Christpoint Church. We also want you to know that if you have any questions, prayer requests, or need information on any of our ministry opportunities, you can email us at www.info@christpoint.church. We love you and we are praying that this will be the best year yet. Welcome home.
Let's notice something together as we break this down. And I'm just going to tell you once again, it works with key points. Key points are going to work for us this morning. So key point number one is Joseph didn't get his royal coat until he got rid of his old clothes. Joseph didn't get his royal coat, put it over here. Joseph didn't get his royal coat until he got rid of his coat of arrogance, his coat of bondage, his coat of bitterness. Because whatever you're enslaved to, you will speak bitterness out of that enslavement. So, that bondage creates a bitterness mentality, a bitterness vocabulary. So, arrogance speaks an arrogance vocabulary. So, he didn't get this coat of royalty until he got that other stuff off of him. So, that had to go first. See, we can't get a spiritual blessing until we get rid of the fleshly chains. Now we can get saved. Now don't think the pastor's saying you can't know the Lord. Yes, no, that's not what I'm saying. We can get saved. We can. I mean, all this. We can come to know the Lord, but we're not going to get our full spiritual blessing until we get rid of the fleshly chains, because this is what's keeping us locked down. So you can't wear two coats at the same time. So here's what I think we're trying to do in the world today is we're trying to wear the coat that enslaves us, maybe even a coat of arrogance. We're good at that one. But we're trying to put the one over it that's a coat of royalty. It doesn't fit. It won't work. It's weird. It's confusing. It's binding. And I want you to notice something with me. The king's wardrobe, it's not consistent with the slave's wardrobe. So he's placed as number 2 in the land. He didn't just come in with all these rags on like we would see on the movies, with his, with the pants up to here all ripped and everything, and dirty all over and his hair all a mess. No, they cleaned him up before he came to Pharaoh. He didn't come like that. Then he puts that coat on him over. Doesn't work that way. You got to take this mess off before this fits. So king's wardrobes are not designed to go over slaves' clothing. So Joseph didn't just put that over, he had to get rid of it. So let's move on. Key point number 2. Joseph may have given up on his family. So we noticed that in the past couple of weeks in the sermons. He even said, look, I named my first son Manasseh because the Lord has caused me to forget my family and what they did to me. So he may have given up on his family. And think about it. You've been gone 13 years. You probably have given up any hope of ever seeing them. So he may have given up on his family, but he never gave up on God, not once. So here's the lesson in this one. People are going to let you down. I'm sorry, it's going to happen. If we are basing our walk with the Lord on what we see in someone else, we're setting ourselves up for failure. We're never getting rid of the garments that are locking us down. Well, all I see is what he or she does. Well, I think you're looking at the wrong person. I mean, because if all you can see is what he or she does, then stop looking at he or she. I mean, my gosh, stop looking. Start looking at Jesus, because he's the one that's not going to let us down. So, he never gave up on his God. See, we never give up on God. We never stop wearing clothing that fits us with God. But you know what we do? We shed things that preoccupies. His royal coat came from God, not from Pharaoh. Let's make sure that we know who it came from. His coat of royalty was maybe physically passed to him by Pharaoh, but it was not given to him by Pharaoh. It was given to him by God. So let's go to Genesis 41 again. Let's look in verse 16. This is what he says. I need you to interpret my dream. Can't do it. It's beyond me. It's not in me to do that. It's not in my power. Joseph had been enslaved or in prison for 13 years and still could not tell the king what he wanted to hear in order to save himself. Because let me tell you something, when you tell the king what he wants to hear in those days, he's probably going to give you something good, at least get you out of prison. Maybe even put you back in Potiphar's house where it was a little bit better than prison. But if you tell the king something he don't want to hear, he's probably going to kill you because you're a slave. Who cares? So he still cannot take credit for it, even though he's given him a word from the Lord. He couldn't tell him what he wanted to hear in order to better his own life. I can't do it, oh great king, but here's what I love. But let me tell you about my Jesus. Let me tell you about my God. See, when people say, I need some kind of help, I need the Lord, I'm so distraught, this is happening. Stop trying to figure it out for them. It's not our job to figure it out. Well, let's sit down. Let's see what the problem is. First of all, let me tell you about my God. Because my God can fix it. All I'm going to be is a sounding board. I'm not good at fixing things. And so Hugh and I were talking one time, and it's like, Hugh goes, I have a problem with empathy. I'm like, I do too. And I'm a pastor. And I have a problem with that too. I just feel like everybody should rub dirt on it and let's go. Tina will sit down with you and she will walk through and shake her head and look at you. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh, golly, I don't like this part, but I will do it. But the thing is, I can't do it. There's nothing I can do to help you. But I know the one who can. He's the one that changes all things, and he's going to do it for you if he did it for me. So key point number 3. You're living in a famine right now, I promise you. You're living in a famine right now. We may not even know that we're in a famine. Because I'm going to tell you, that first year may not have even been noticeable, because I'm thinking this is what they thought. Well, next year's got to be better than this one. How many of us said 2020 and 2021, boy, next year's got to be better than this one? Boy, I'll be glad to get this year out of my way. Get this one behind me. See, you're living in a famine right now. And here's my question. What are you going to do with your royal position? Because we're in royal positions. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with the famine that is surrounding us? Genesis 41:54. I want to show you something. There was a famine in the land. 7 years of famine began to come. Famine in the land. We are living right now in a famine of the Word. There's a famine of the Word of God in our land. And see, here's the thing. If you're sitting here today, you are part of the solution, not part of the problem. So, you could be either one. So here's the problem. What are we going to do with our new position of royalty? Are we going to help people? Are we going to help ourselves? Are we going to help our family? Or are we going to just watch them die? Verse 42, here's the thing. It affected all the lands. It affected every land. In verse 42, it affected every land. Not just the land of Egypt, but the lands around it were affected. So everybody's affected. See, it doesn't just affect us. The famine of the Word doesn't just affect me. It affects my family. It affects my children. Do you realize that it not only affects my children, it affects the grandchildren you don't even have yet? It affects everybody. If you allow the famine of the Word into your home, it will devastate your posterity, your ancestry, your people going forward. It will devastate them. Because if they don't hear the Word now, then they're not going to pass the Word down then. So this is so important. Right now, let's just consider these the good years. The fat cow years. Let's consider these the good years. See, I want to ask this question. Who are we going to save in the good years? Who are we going to save in the good years? Are we stocking up? Are we bringing into the storehouse the Word? Are we stocking the Word into our hearts? Because when times get tough, we got to have something else other than us that comes out into people's lives. So who are we going to save? Key point number 4. Joseph's royal coat was never given by God so he could rule over the people. So it was never given to him by God, parentheses, not by Pharaoh. It was never given to him so he could rule over the people. See, here's what I think we kind of think about. It's common for us to think this way. Once I get to where I want to be or where I feel like I need to be, I'm going to rest. See, I would like to do that too. But God keeps reminding me, you're not called to rest, you're called to minister. You're called to be on the front lines. That's where you're called to be. So, let me show you something. If you'll notice something, I'll show you 2 things. God always gave the dream to the king in the Bible, or most of the time. He gave the dream to the king, but he gave the interpretation to the slave. See, here's the thing. God's going to use everybody equally. He's going to use everybody equally. We don't have a greater platform just because we stand right here. Your platform is powerful. So I want to show you something. Revelation chapter 2, verse 6. This is what God said He hates. God said He hates the dealings or the practices of the Nicolaitans. Let me show you what the word Nicolaitans means. It's a compound word. And this is a shameless plug, by the way, for the Revelation study going forward. We will be visiting this pretty quickly. The word Nico means to conquest or to triumph or to victory. The word Laos means laity or people. So actually, what God despises and hates is the actions of the Nicolaitans, which the word means to rule over the people. To rule over the people or to lord over the people. God's not called us to lord over people. God's not called us to say, you're less than me because your clothes don't match my clothes. I'm standing next to you and telling you, you don't look as good as I do because you don't have Walmart clothes on like I do. Because that's where I got mine, by the way. But anyway, so we're not called to rule over the people. We're called to do this one thing. Joseph was given a coat of royalty so he could feed the people and he could save the people. That's the reason we have our coat of royalty. It's not so we can get more lands and that we could expand our kingdom and we could make more money. That's not, what? Our trophies that are on our walls are, what trophies do we have on our walls? That I made $100,000, that I made $200,000 last year, or that my children are walking with the Lord. These are the trophies we need to be deciphering which one we want on our walls. Joseph was given that coat of royalty so he could feed the people and save the people. Not so that they could be lorded over. So Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, God brought me to this position. So what's happening here, this is at the very end of the story. What's happening here is the brothers, Jacob has died. They've taken Jacob back to the land of his fathers and buried him. And now that Jacob has died, the brothers who originally started all this mess are real upset and they're real bothered that Joseph's going to do something to retaliate. So Joseph says, hey, God brought me here. God brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. I'm not going to throw y'all in jail. I'm not going to be mean to you. What you meant for evil, God changed it and turned it for good. We are placed in this royal position to feed those around us and to save as many as we can. And it starts here first. If we don't save here first, if we don't get this right first, we can't get anything else right. So key point number 5. The gods of this world will confuse us. The gods of this world will confuse us. Let me show you some, chapter 41, verse 17. Pharaoh starts his dream out with this. I was standing on the banks of the Nile. I was standing on the banks of the Nile. The Nile was considered sacred to these people. They worshipped everything. If they saw an ant going in the direction that they thought it should go in, they worshipped that thing. So the Nile is what fed them. They even considered when it flooded its banks that, it fertilized and watered the entire their crops. So they thought that was a good thing. They considered that a very good thing, which I guess it was. But they considered the Nile to be sacred. And Pharaoh starts it out with, I was standing on the banks of the Nile, and this is what happened. The cows came out and all that stuff. So that Nile is a form of deity. Whatever went in was considered necessary. Whatever came out was considered important. What Pharaoh worshipped confused him. See, our little gods in our lives will confuse us. TV will confuse us. Facebook will confuse us. And I'm not against any of these things. I have these things. I do these things. But they will confuse us. Our jobs will confuse us. Because anything that is a little g God that we try to put as a big G God will confuse us. So he looked and he said, I'm confused. Why would one of our sacred entities, why would our sacred river confuse me in such a way? See, the God who is over you is over your created gods also would bring clarity to your confusion. See, he needed clarity to his confusion. His so-called deity in that river was not bringing peace to his confusion. God had to be brought in to bring peace to the created things. We create these things, we create these gods, and we get confused because of them. They're never meant to lead us or to be our God. They're meant to be passageway. A river was a passageway. It would sustain life. It gave us hydration, not to be worshipped. So, most voices in our heads don't need to be there. Most voices in our heads don't need to be there. They need stripped like a coat of arrogance from us. So, key point number 6. We are identified by the clothes that we wear. We're identified by the clothes that we wear. Chapter 41, verse 45. Pharaoh changed Joseph's name to Zaphanath-Paneah. That's what he changed his name to. So your name is Zaphanath-Paneah. So I dare you. Let's just say, Trudy, Johnny Hood's daughter's about to have babies. Please name one Zaphanath-Paneah. Please do. I mean, if I had another child, I would name it Zaphanath-Paneah, because nobody's ever going to be able to say it, and everybody's always going to want to know what it means. So this is what it means: God speaks and lives. This is Pharaoh, who was confused because of his issue. He is now saying, because of his God, he's now saying, look, Zaphanath-Paneah is your name, because God lives and God speaks. So, coat of arrogance testifies to our flesh. Coat of bondage testifies to our bitterness. And the coat of humility testifies to our submission to God. The coat of royalty testifies to God is alive in us. That's what it testifies to. So key point number 7. Make every home a harvest field. Make every home a harvest field. Chapter 41 again. Verse 42. The famine would affect all the lands. Verse 31, the bad will be so bad that during the bad, that even the memory of the good will be forgotten. So make every home a harvest field. Let me show you what this looks like. It's going to be bad. This is a picture of hell, by the way. It's going to be bad. During the good, we need to seed everything. We don't hold back lands in a good time. If God says, look, I'm going to bless you. So I got a little acre here that I'm working. I got 75 acres, but I'm only working an acre every year. And God says, I'm going to bless you with abundance for 7 years. Stop just planting the acreage and start planting everything. Till up the backyard. I mean, everywhere you see, if it's got a spot of soil on it, sow it down. In other words, stop hoarding up. This is what we're doing in our lives. Stop holding back. Stop holding back. See, till up the yards, planting towns, planting the hillsides, planting in the medians, planting town, planting the valleys, every corner and every ditch, because when God says He's blessing you in this season, then believe Him that He's blessing us in this season. Leave no stone unturned, plant everything that we see, make every home. In other words, don't disqualify somebody because you don't like them. Believe me, there's a lot of people I don't like. You say, well, you're a pastor, you're supposed to like everybody. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm supposed to love everybody. There's a lot of people I don't like. I'm just going to tell you right now. Because we're real people, living real lives, serving a real God. Hey, welcome home. I don't like some people. So anyway, leave no stone unturned. Don't reject them because you don't like them, because God loves them. So bring them in. Every home's a harvest field. Key point number 8. Leave everything behind. Don't take any. What is back there needs to stay back there. In chapter 45, verse 20, don't worry about your personal belongings. He sent them to go get all the family of Israel and bring them back. He says, look, tell them don't even worry about their clothes. Don't get anything. Everything that you will ever need and ever want, we will provide for. The best of all the land of Egypt has to offer is yours. I mean, are you kidding me? Yeah, Dad, I'm number 2 in the land. And you're my dad. You're never going to want for anything. So it's on, like Donkey Kong. So we're there. So don't bring that old clothing, the old wasteland clothing, into the new place of a supply. Don't do that. There's nothing for you in the rearview mirror. Leave the old life behind. Leave the old garments behind. The old coats behind. The old arrogance behind. The old bitterness and bondage behind. See, Jesus has got you some new clothes. He's got you some new clothes. Joseph's brothers had rejected him, mistreated him, mocked his message, symbolically killed him, ignored his message. We've done this same thing to Jesus over and over and over. He clothed them with new garments. Jesus clothes us with new garments. How many times we reject Him and He still gives us new garments? See, their coats were a sign of the old wasteland. Now they have a coat of a divine covering. Let's go to key point number 9. Never say never. If you have children, you know what I'm talking about. Never say never. I'll never forget walking in. And it was a restaurant, and my sister-in-law was pregnant, and with her first child, she's 21 now, so it's been 22 years ago, and there was a kid eating off the table. And I'll never forget my brother-in-law said, my kid will never eat off the table. I'm like, yeah, I guarantee you by the time that kid gets a year and a half, he'll be eating dirt off the ground. Never say never, because let me tell you something. I'm living proof of this. I have a granddaughter that she wouldn't let hardly anybody take or do anything. The second one, he can eat dirt. They don't care. So chapter 42, verse 6, chapter 50, verse 18, the brothers bowed before Joseph. Joseph told them early on in chapter 37, all y'all going to bow down to me. And they said, we're not going to ever bow down to you. Are you crazy? Are you smoking crack? We're not going to do that. It's not going to happen. So I want you to notice 2 times in Scripture the brothers bowed before Joseph. Never say never, because you're going to eat those words. Just like he told them years earlier. Key point number 10. The revival is in the coat. The revival is in the coat. For chapter 45, verse 27. The spirit of their father Jacob revived. Jacob thinks that Joseph has been killed. Remember, we brought his coat back, put some blood on it. He's been mauled by an animal. Oh my gosh, my son, my son. So when they come back, they have to fess up and tell him, hey, Joseph, your son, is alive. And not only is he alive, dude's over the whole kingdom of Egypt. So his spirit didn't revive because his son had been exalted. His spirit revived because his son was alive. The coat of royalty represents God alive in us, and when God's alive in us, we're alive in us. So the spirit of Jacob was revived. It's almost like he gained some kind of youthfulness. When you give your heart to the Lord, you say, this is what you say, I needed the church. People say, I needed this church. Well, let me tell you something. The church needed you. Because when you give your heart to the Lord, it's a revival for me. I'm an old man Jacob. And when I hear somebody give their heart to the Lord, that means they're not dead anymore. They're alive now, and everything in me leaps. So you know what? Now I'm excited. You've revived all of us by giving your heart to the Lord. It revives the church. Just like when somebody says, I believe God's calling me to serve in one of the ministries. Boom. It's revival. All of a sudden now, something's alive. A brand new vision is alive in someone. It revives what's dead inside of you. It brings the church to life. Key point number 11, verse 22. Your coat doesn't just affect you. Your coat doesn't just affect you. Joseph's process to royalty provided new garments for his entire family. In other words, I've got a coat of royalty, not so I can lord over people and say, look at me, I'm all that, but so I can provide for people, I can feed people, and I can save people. And he brings to his family brand new coats, brand new coverings. See, when we're leaving the famine to a place of abundance, we need to dress more like the king and less like the wasteland. So here's the thing. When you give your heart to the Lord, you don't look the same as you used to look. You don't act the same. You don't go to the same places. You don't speak the same language. Joseph spoke a different language in Egypt than he did at the end of his time as he did when he first got there. He dressed differently at the end than he did when he first got there. If we're going to walk with the Lord, then we need to dress and look and act like the Lord. We don't need to dress like wasteland. We need to dress, what I mean is that spiritual covering. We don't need to walk around in a spirit of bitterness and a spirit of bondage or a spirit of arrogance. We need to walk fully and trustfully in the Lord in a new garment of royalty. This is what covering, and it's noticeable. People notice it. So notice with me, salvation doesn't come from any of the other 3 coats. Even humility. Salvation didn't come from those 3 coats. Salvation only comes when we put on the coat of royalty. When we clothe ourselves with Jesus. That's when salvation comes. That coat affects the way everybody else around us dresses. Pharaoh gave Israel the very best of the land. Joseph fed the people. He housed the people, he clothed the people, he prospered the people, he saved the people. And because of what Joseph did, they went in as a family into Egypt, and 430 years later, they came out as a nation. Just like 70-something people when they went in, and they came out 2-point-something million people. Several generations later, the very best of the land, Joseph was in control of, so he could feed, house, clothe, prosper. And when you prosper, that means everything under you prospers. He saved the people from death. He saved them from extinction. God didn't give us a royal coat so we could keep it to ourselves. He gave us a royal coat so we could save people and feed people. That's why he did it. So, here's my question. Who are you feeding? Who are you feeding? That's my question. Who are you saving? That's my question. Joseph was given, in 41 verse 14, Joseph was given a royal coat after he got rid of the prison clothes. Your new garment will never fit over your old prison clothes. What imprisons you and what frees you is two different things. They cannot fit together. So I want you to remember this. What imprisons you and what frees you are two different things. Hello again, and thank you for tuning in. I pray that today's sermon has spoken to your heart and has ministered to you well. We just want you to know that we have two locations, one at our Sparta campus, our main campus at Sparta on the square in Sparta, and our second campus is at Smithfield behind Ace Hardware. And we would love for you to call Christpoint Church your church home. And if you're viewing this and you can't get in to church and you feel like you want to be a part of the church, then you can always be a part of the church. Just drop us a note and let us know that you enjoy being on board with us. And if you'd like to give and be a part of the ministry, then you can do that by just sending a check to one of the locations at 614 Murphy Street, Smithfield, 13 Liberty Square in Sparta, and we'll get you on the road. We just love you so much. And you can download the Christpoint Church of Tennessee app, and you can give online. So we are real people. We're living real lives, and we're serving a real God. And we just want to tell everyone, welcome home. We're so glad that you tuned in with us. Welcome home.